All right, hello everyone. Eric Marks here again with FindingMiddle-earth.com. And today we're going to talk about some gear that you might want to consider if you're getting interested in panorama photography. So I've been shooting panoramas handheld with my cameras for quite some time, and sometimes they work out great and sometimes they don't work out very well. But when I get a closer look at most of the panoramas that I've shot, they're never really great to where it would be something that I would consider selling as a fine art piece or as a print or anything like that, where, you know, if you blow it up bigger than just an Instagram or a Facebook screen, I don't think I would be very proud of it, because I've never really invested much into panorama photography gear. I'm very familiar with how the process works. I've just never really taken it, I guess, serious enough, and so that's going to change now, and I'm going to kind of take you guys along with me on my journey of continuing to improve my panorama photography skills, because it's a very interesting art of photography. It's kind of its own art form, kind of like printing. You know, panorama photography has its own set of challenges. So I'm going to talk about a few of those. First off, the company that I have the gear from today. So you guys know Acratech, the ball head that I love, and I reviewed this about a year ago, and I'm still using this as my main ball head. I took it off the tripod so it would be easier to show it in front of the video here. And this ball head has been fantastic. I love the skeletal design. The best part is it's lightweight. And it holds up great. I've never had any part of this ball head fail on me. It's just been fantastic through salt water and the Georgia mud and red clay that we have here in northern Georgia, and pretty much any weather element that I've thrown at it or anything, a few hits on the concrete, it's been great. So this company also makes some panorama gear. A lot of other companies make it as well. I'm not here to tell you which gear is better than another. I'm just saying that I like Acratech because they put a lot of attention to detail into their gear and into their products, and the same with their customers. So when I called Acratech about a week ago to chat with them about their panorama photography gear, the owner's wife, the actual owner of the company, his wife answered the phone, and before I knew it, we were talking on the phone for almost 2 hours, and we just talked about the panoramic stuff. She told me like every possible feature I could know about it. We talked about the photography industry and where things are going. We talked about some future endeavors that they might be taking. We talked about my YouTube channel, and so they're just a really cool company. I don't have any affiliate links with them or anything. They don't pay me or cut me any checks to say that. They're just cool people over there. So it's always nice when you're buying great products and the people behind the products are just as good as the products. So anyway, I have some panorama photography gear to go over. We'll talk about that in just a second. So I'm going to make another video that I'll probably release late next week that's going to be an in-the-field example of me using the gear to take a panoramic photo. And the reason I broke it up into two videos is because this is kind of the gear-heavy, boring yet interesting portion of the panorama photography, which is the gear stuff, and then we'll move on to the actual in the field example in another video. So anyway, I need some panorama photography gear in front of me, so give me just a second. All right, so now that I have all the panorama gear in front of me, I'll talk about each piece. I'm just gonna try to make this a semi-short video. I know I tend to drag things on, so I'm not gonna talk about it super in depth, but I will tell you why I'm using each piece and what it's for, as brief as possible. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so this is the Acratech panoramic head here. It's not a ball head, but it's a panoramic head, and it does a pan and tilt function, so we'll talk about that in a second. This is the Acratech leveling base, which no panoramic gear kit would ever be complete without some sort of leveling base. And then we have the Nodal rail, and this is the Acratech Nodal rail. This might be kind of a foreign piece of gear to a lot of people if you're not familiar with panorama photography and the challenges of the parallax issue and finding the nodal point of your lens and all those things. So we'll talk about that in just a second. So let's start with the beast here. Let's start with the panorama head. And by the way, just quickly, I know I'm kind of prolonging this a little bit, but quickly, if you are just going to photograph panoramas from side to side. So if you're going to go like just a left to right panorama and you're not going to do multi-row panning and tilting, you might want to just forget all this gear and just look at the GP ball head that I have. And that's because this ball head actually does kind of 3 different things. So obviously it's a ball head. Second, this, with the provided Allen screw, this whole clamp that holds the camera here, this whole thing comes off and actually reinstalls on the bottom. And then the bottom of this, where the clamp is now, actually screws into the tripod and it becomes a leveling base. So how cool is that? So you can take the clamp, put it here, and this becomes your own leveling base, which if you don't know why that's important, I'll talk about that in a second. And then you can level out your panoramas with the clamp up here, lock your camera off up here, okay, on this side, and then you're ready to start shooting your left to right panoramas. And then you don't have to worry about the multi-row if you're not into that. So you might just want to look at this ball head, just this, without all this stuff. Maybe you'll probably need the Nodal rail, which I'll talk about, but you don't have to have the head of the leveling base. So you can just do this ball head if you want to. That's a really cool feature. The other feature, just quickly, that this head has, it's a little area milled out right here for a super smooth gimbal head. It actually kind of doubles as a gimbal head. So if you had like a 600mm f4 with a lens collar, just pop that baby right in here and the lens literally becomes weightless and just this becomes a little gimbal right off the side here. And even though this thing weighs, I think, right at a pound or a little less than a pound, don't let it fool you. This thing is a beast. It will definitely hold that lens up. Okay, so let's put this aside for a second, open up the panorama head. All right. Let's get this out of the way. All right, so here is the big boy. Very nice. It's just as well built as the GP ball head. It's just as well machined. So let's take a look at this real quick. So this big oversized grip here, this knob, which is great. I love how they kind of oversize their knobs. This is your tilt function. So it tilts up and down for your multi-row panoramas for tilting. And then of course this knob here pans the unit left and right, so you can shoot your left to right panos. Now what's also cool about this is they give you laser etched degree markings for the panning and for the tilting. So if you're tilting, you can actually tilt by different degree markers. And the reason why that's important is because if you're doing multiple rows, tilting up and then taking left to right, and then coming back and tilting down and going left to right, this way you know exactly what degree markers you were at, so that your up panoramas and your down panoramas, they can all start at the same degree markers, so that Photoshop stitches your panorama like that. It's just super easy. So the degree markers are super nice, and they're laser etched in, so you can't ever sweat on them and rub them off or anything like that. Another cool thing is, if you don't like the orientation, the direction of the tripod clamp here that actually holds your camera in place, then what's cool is they give you this little knob under here, and I don't know exactly how this operates yet. I just saw this online, but I'm assuming, I think you just loosen this up all the way and you literally just pick this up and you can turn it. So you can face your camera a different way, whatever works better for you, depending on if you have an L bracket or some kind of other Arca Swiss compatible plate, and you just pick it up and drop it wherever you want. You can even do it at an angle. So you can leave it right there. It has little teeth on the bottom of this thing that are compatible with this little thing here on the bottom that grips it. And as soon as you're happy with the orientation, so if I drop it there, I can just tighten this sucker back up, make sure it's super tight, and there you go. We're good to go. So I can unscrew this, put my camera in place, and this thing is solid. I am never, ever, ever afraid to let my cameras dangle from Acratech products. So yeah, this thing is super solid. I will trust it until I die. So anyway, there's that. Here's your huge tension knob. The cool thing is they give you a little bubble level on the panoramic head and on the leveling base. So anyway, this is your panoramic head. This is great. All right, let's take a look at the leveling base. All right, so here's the leveling base. So why is a leveling base important for panorama photography? Okay, if your tripod is not level for panorama photography, and you don't have a leveling base, then what's going to happen is, for example, when we're all out in the field, right? We have 3 legs on our tripod. So It's like this, right? And sometimes we shorten the leg, so it kind of leans the tripod over. Well, what happens is when we shorten the leg or do whatever we need to do to kind of compensate for the terrain that we're on, it makes the actual legs unlevel. Now, I know we can kind of straighten that out with the ball head sometimes, right? We can kind of compensate for the ball head. But look, this is still on level, the base of your ball head. Even though we're compensating with the ball head, this is on level. So what's going to happen is when you do your panorama is going to be level for about 2 or 3 shots, and then you're going to go down and you're going to go up, and you're going to have this horrible like stair step effect with your panorama photography, and that's going to make it very hard to stitch in Photoshop, and it's going to make your verticals kind of wonky. You're going to have to spend a lot of time in Photoshop like I normally have to do with the transform tool and the perspective warp and try to fix things, and that's why I just don't do a lot of panorama photography as much anymore, because it's just a lot of work. I've never really invested in the right gear. So a leveling base goes on your tripod first before the head. So the head actually goes on top of this leveling base here. Okay, so that way if your legs are all kind of funky and wonky in a million different ways and you're all, you're just really crazy with your legs, this is a leveling base. So this will actually level out. It has a bubble level on it. This will level everything out for you, all right? Like this. Just imagine that this is on the tripod. So we'll get this nice and level on the bubble. And now that this is level, it's a separate base of leveling from the legs. So now I can take my head, and my head will go on something that's level, regardless of what the tripod legs are doing. So I just screw this sucker right on here. Just make sure it's just hand tight. And this is exactly what the leveling base is for. It will level out the panoramic head. So there's that, all right? That's the purpose of a leveling base. And believe it or not, most companies, which is crazy to me, they don't put a bubble level on their leveling base. That last thing is the nodal rail. Let's take a look at this bad boy. All right, I opened it upside down. So same thing, you get your Allen wrenches, an instruction manual, all that good stuff. Man, this thing is like, I know it looks like it's just a tiny little thing, but it is built really well. I mean, it's the same, I don't know, what is it, like aircraft aluminum or something that they use? So what would happen is, all right, let's just leave the level aside for a second. Obviously the leveling base is going to be on the bottom through all this, all right? So just imagine that. And what's going to happen is the nodal rail is going to be, I'm going to loosen this up. The nodal rail is going to be in here, and your camera is going to be mounted to the nodal rail. So it's going to look something like this. Let me kind of give you a reference. So it's going to be kind of like that, okay? Let me hold that up. I don't have it clamped in, but you can kind of see. So your camera's on the nodal rail, all right? The nodal rail is clamped into the tripod head. And the reason why that's important is because this nodal rail is going to help you find the nodal point, or no parallax point, of your lens. And it's going to be different for every lens and for every camera sensor. Versus, meaning full frame versus micro four thirds or APS-C or whatever. Now, what is a nodal point? Briefly, I'm going to try to explain this very shortly. Here's a good example. If you hold one finger out and you close one of your eyes and you just turn your head, I can see that everything behind my finger, the background, is all moving in relationship to my finger. Every time that I move my head, the whole background shifts left or right. So you want to make sure that that doesn't happen. You're going to have to find the point, your nodal point of your lens, in which you can line two verticals up and they don't move in relationship to each other. So what I like to do is I just like to grab a light stand and just go out like to my garage, which my garage has this these vertical line patterns that are just built into the garages. So what I do is I'll take the light stand and I'll line it up from the camera's point of view. I'll just put the camera on the tripod at a guessing point like this, and I'll take the light stand and I'll line it up with that vertical line that's built into my garage. And then I'll just turn my camera. You can do this any way, by the way, for the nodal point. It's going to be the same thing from vertical to horizontal. So you just turn your camera left and right like this with the panning knob on the panoramic head, and you need to find the point to where the verticals do not move. When you're panning your head, you need to be able to only see the light stand and not see that background vertical move. So if this happens to where you see it move, and every time you turn your head you see the background vertical move, then you know that's not the nodal point. So then you need to loosen this up and scoot your camera forward, You're just a little bit forward, just a little bit backwards, something like this, okay? And you just scoot it on these degree markers until you find the nodal point. And you will end up finding the point to where the verticals do not move in relationship to each other. No matter how you move your camera, you'll see them stop and they'll line up. And when that happens, you'll look at the degree marker that's on, that your nodal rail is on. And then you just take note of that in a notebook or write it down on your phone. So anyway, that's what the nodal rail is for. It's to find the no parallax point or the nodal point of the lens. And the reason you want to do that is so that your panoramas are perfectly stitched and the verticals are all perfectly lined up after you make sure you're all level with the leveling base. So I know it sounds really complicated. I promise you it's not that hard at all. It's actually super easy. All this can be set up and done within like a little less than half an hour to be able to find the nodal point of a couple lenses and get all this hooked up and leveled. To actually level it and put it on the tripod, I mean, that takes what, 2 or 3 minutes? You just make sure the bubble is level. And then once you know your nodal point, you don't have to find it out again. Once you know it, you're good for life. You just write it down in a notebook or your phone and you'll always know the nodal point of your lens. So for example, I have a trip planned this Sunday that I'm going on, and I plan on taking some panoramas. So I'm gonna go ahead and go outside to my garage with a light stand and find out the nodal point of my 35. I'm gonna find out the nodal point of my Nikkor 16 to 35 and my Nikkor 70 to 200 for my D850. And I'm gonna go ahead and have all these 3 lenses kind of calibrated to what the nodal point is so that I can do some in the field examples for you guys to release for the next video. So that is in a gist what panoramic photography is, or I guess how it comes to be. And this is the gear that I have chosen to go with. Like I said, I'm not like sponsored by Acratech or anything. They're just a fantastic company. Yes, there are other companies, plenty of other companies that make panoramic gear. I think the biggest selling point of the Acratech stuff is that it's lightweight. It's just super easy to throw this stuff in the camera bag versus having those big L-shaped gimbals that you have to take apart and break down, and they're really heavy. These things are lightweight, just like the GP ball head. So that's kind of the biggest selling point of this stuff. Obviously, any company can make something that levels something out, but when you really think out the stuff like the degree markers and just making it so the ergonomics and so well designed, that's where it's just Acratech, I think, went just a little bit further than most of the other people. I have this strong belief that if there is a big company out there getting a lot of press for something and they're doing something really well, then there's probably a smaller company that's not getting much press that's doing things just as well or maybe even better. And so I just have to do a lot of research to find out those companies, and I think Acratech is one of those companies. So anyway, again, not a sponsor, there's no affiliate link, just go to their website and you can find this stuff there. Panoramic head, leveling base, nodal rail, and this is the gear that I'm going to use to do some panorama photography this weekend. I'm super excited because I finally have some good gear to do it, and we'll go from there. I'll show you guys the results in the next video. If you guys have any questions about any of this stuff, of course, let me know in the comments, and thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you would like to find out more about me and how you can improve your photography, please check out my premium tutorials at findingmiddleearth.com/store.